Easy peasy, man.
Alrighty, so joining me today, he vocally slices, verbally dices, and ultimately technical death metally entices. He's the best
Best
dad
dad
ever.
ever.
Best dad ever, and he's got a mug to prove it. I'm very, very honored to be joined by Kelly Shaefer of US progressive death metal legends Atheist. Kelly, how are you going? We made it despite the tech fuck ups.
Yeah, Simon, we made it. I'm doing great, my friend, and it's good to meet you and talk with you. It's
Yeah, excellent, excellent. So how things been going for you over there in the US?
been a busy year. We did a Latin American tour just a few weeks ago,
Mm.
um, and just been we did a couple California shows early in the year, and been writing new music, and yeah, it's just a lot of fun staying busy. We're getting ready to start our North American tour in a few days, and then we're coming out to Australia and to Japan. So lots of good stuff. And then Europe in September. So busy year of touring.
Absolutely, mate. I mean, you're essentially covering. I'm sure a couple of people will be offended because but they'll be like, "You miss me," but you're pretty much darting across the map. So you guys, so South America, walk us through a little bit about how that tour went.
Well, that's just man, the fan base in South America and all through Latin America, Mexico and Costa Rica and just huge avid metal fans, very passionate, very they respond differently to this music and they respond to different albums um, differently than the rest of the world does. So, Elements, our third album, is a very popular record down south because it has a lot of Latin jazz on it,
Mm,
um, and Latin jazz influence, I should say, along with the
mm,
metal. And but I just can't say enough about the infectious sort of passion that they have and the way they react to the music. We it was our second time down there, and this was the best time. It was just a lot of fun, and got to do it with our Cryptopsy friends. We've done Europe with Cryptopsy and now South America with them as well, and we just have a lot of fun together. We're very like-minded bands as people, so
mm.
it's hard sometimes you get out, if you find yourself touring with a band that maybe is difficult to get along with, that can make for a shitty tour. But we've just had like stellar times with Cryptopsy and Suffocation and bands like that. We've always had a good time with, so that really matters. But
Mm.
yeah, so a lot of fun, a lot of flying. That's one of the hardest things about South America is you can't drive through South America. You have to fly every morning. So a lot of times we, pack up from the gig, get back to the hotel at like 2 in the morning, and then we have to be in the lobby at 4 in the morning to get to the airport by 6. And so that goes on for about 2 weeks,
Oh
and
wow.
where you're just literally not getting any sleep at all. And but it's worth it though. It's a lot of fun.
Mm, mm. That sounds interesting. That sounds very similar to what you basically geographically have to do that here with Australia. So how do you find managing that? I mean, you've been in the band for quite a while. 2 weeks of having to get up at 4 to 6 a.m. every day touring. Um, not as easy as when you say, fresh 18 years old, trying to do it. Like, what helped you pull through that touring cycle. Like, I guess it helps to have, for instance, the passionate South American fans, plus the fact you're on tour and being with your mates in Cryptopsy. But it sounds also pretty grueling too, man.
No, no question. It's it's far from glamorous when the shows are fantastic, but it's the actual sitting in the airport for 3 hours, 4 hours, and every morning after you're dead tired from playing just a few hours prior. But I don't know, you just kind of appreciate it, and just remember, hey, we're not working in a factory somewhere doing the same mundane job day after day after day, and you just got to keep that in your head and keep yourself in check and just
Mm,
appreciate the fact that for me it's different. I mean, the guys in my band are a lot younger, and so
mm,
for me, I have this intense appreciation for the opportunities,
mm,
and I've been doing this 35 years, so it's I never lose sight of that. I'm always
Yeah.
grateful, and the young guys in my band, they're obviously grateful. It's their first time down there, and so they got to
Mm,
see a lot of things, and it's fun for me to take these guys out around the world and have them see things that that they have never seen before. It makes it fun uh,
mm,
to go to different places. We went to Italy, and we played in Venice, we played in Rome, and places like that. And just to see their excitement is a lot of fun for me.
mm,
And the bonus is just getting to play the music and the shows and the reaction from the fans. It's amazing.
mm.
Good job.
Fantastic. That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
And in terms of playing the music, I guess one of the things that I'm very curious to kind of question you about around, it's probably, I imagine it's probably like second nature to you as a vocalist, but when we look at atheist music, it's quite complex in terms of time signatures, time changes. You mentioned before, some albums might have a bit more of a Latin jazz influence, some might have another sort of influence in the mix. As a vocalist, what's your sort of experience of trying to, I guess, manage your vocal duties amongst those ever-changing kind of rhythmic dynamics on
Well,
the live front?
I wrote a lot of it on guitar. So I mean,
Mm,
I played guitar in the band up until '93.
yeah.
So I have an understanding and a feel for the time shift and the changes that kind of weave in and out of our songs. So it does become kind of second nature.
Mm,
For me, remembering lyrics is not really an issue. As soon as I hear the music, the lyrics pop into my head. With the exception of every now and then, if we've pulled in over the last 2 years a lot of songs that haven't been played in 30 plus years. So I
wow.
had to kind of
Yeah.
go back and brush up a little bit every now and then. One of the harder things is doing a second verse first or first verse second, where you fuck it up like that. If you start the phrase with the wrong word, then for me, because of the way that I've sort of ingested and remember the lyrics, I've got to make sure that I don't start with the wrong verse, for some
Mm,
reason, because if I do, there's no way I can fucking fix it. So that's
mm,
happened to me over the last, 5 years, a little bit here and there. But yeah, it's just just been doing it for so long, and these songs are such a part of me, and I just, I feel they're just kind of woven into my soul. So
mm.
and vocally, in terms of like staying, um, because we're doing like 32 shows in 34 days, something like that.
Wow.
Um, that's a lot of, there's no days off, and
Mm,
so yeah, you gotta, I mean, I am definitely far from the picture of vocalist health.
mm,
When it comes, I should say it's not a health thing, but it's an example to other vocalists. I would be a horrible example because I
mm,
drink Jägermeister and I smoke cigarettes and I smoke weed and
mm,
uh, and that's just my formula, man. That's how I roll. But I think Jägermeister oddly has been this huge blessing for me over the last few years because if you drink whiskey or tequila or things like that on the road, it really dehydrates your vocals. And
mm.
somehow Jaeger just doesn't do that. I found other singers that we've toured with have found that to be the case as well. And so yeah, I just like to have fun, man. You know what I mean? And it could all be over tomorrow. So I just
Mm,
try to go out and have a good time, keep my head in the right space and just enjoy the moment every day that it happens.
that's fantastic. That's great to hear. And I promise listeners, there's not a bottle of Jaeger just slowly being sort of descended down behind us as we speak.
Here it is right here. Jaeger and Red
Uh,
Bull, man. Yeah, the Red Bull really helps a lot too because drinking a little bit of Red Bull, you kind of feel, you feel like your edges are smoothed out, but you've also got a lot of energy. So,
mm,
I usually, and I'm a very calm person until about 7 p.m. And
mm,
then once it's time to turn into that guy, I'm definitely an entirely different person on stage than I am as a day-to-day human being,
mm,
So it's
mm.
kind of so it's a lot of fun to turn into that character after dark.
So walk us through a little bit what you mean around that guy. You feel that you're sort of stepping into a different persona basically around 7 p.m. and there's a set of around that there's a bit of set of expectations. Like how does that guy give us a bit of a sort of a mental image through words, of course, how that guy looks for you.
Well, I think that, you know, there's this misconception that people that perform are never concerned about going out on stage in front of a lot of people. And
Mm,
that never really goes away. You know, people can pretend like that doesn't matter. But anytime, you know, I'm backstage and I hear the intro music playing and, you know, these days, I don't even do sound check. I have, you know, the guys sound check for me. And because I almost feel like it's like getting in a fight, you know, and
mm,
you never want to go out and kind of pretend to fight. So there's really no warming up with me at all. It's like I jump into the fire and then, and just, you know, and just turn into that guy. So when I walk out on stage for the first time, I'm seeing the crowd for the first time. Feeling the energy for the first time. And so I, you know, having a couple of drinks really kind of makes it possible for me to feel, fearless, you
mm.
know, and you know, maybe not a good example for you know a young vocalist, but whatever, man, it's fucking rock and roll, you know. It's
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
everybody has their ways and vices to get to the level they need to get to, and you know, I've just always been a big pot smoker, and so I just find ways of preparing my brain for the different settings that each day holds. You know, I mean,
Mm,
one day you could be in front of 40,000 people in France. The next day you could be in front of 400 in fucking Lawrence, Kansas. You know, I mean,
mm,
and you gotta, you know, you just gotta, no matter two people or 2,000, you just gotta fucking kill it. And
mm,
you can't show fear. You know, you got to go out there and really. So that's you know the ritual for me is. I used to smoke pot before I would go on stage, but I don't really anymore. I just smoke afterwards now because I just like I said, just it's almost like having a couple of glasses of wine to you know
mm,
to sort of make yourself feel comfortable enough to you know to get through whatever situation you need to get through. And so that's successful for me. I mean, the rest of the guys in the band all have different ways of getting themselves ready. Our bass player Yoav, he doesn't do any drugs. He doesn't take any. He doesn't have any caffeine. He doesn't eat. He barely eats sugar. He's
mm,
just a you know he's a really straight edge kid and he's a fiery performer, just a ridiculous player and
mm,
performer. And so it's really it's interesting to watch his process.
mm.
And you know, and the rest of the guys too. Everybody, I think you know, I've slowly pulled three of the guys into my little pregame ritual. You know, we usually have a one shot together
Yeah.
before we go on stage, and it's just been working. I mean, I've had the lineup that I have right now for we've done this will be the fourth or fifth tour that we've done around the world, and you know, we're really coming into a real comfort zone as far as trusting each other to go on stage and perform at a level that's equal across the stage. You know, and
Mm,
just a tremendous amount of fun.
mm. So you've mentioned a few times that because you've gone through quite a lot of lineup changes over the years, and you have being relatively young. I don't blame him in one sense. I mean, anyone who's got to fill in for Tony's shoes with the material, and other bass players and there's been a lot of just I think without sitting here and charting the whole Wikipedia bar chart. There's been some chopping and changes over the years, but you've mentioned that there's been several world tours and all of those members have been there a while. Do you feel like things are in a really established space now with the current lineup?
Absolutely. I'm, you know, prepared to make a record with these guys and I'd fight 10 men for each one of them. You know, I mean, I really, really,
Mm,
really can't say enough about this lineup. And, you know, there's been some good lineups over the years, but this in particular it just hits on all cylinders. And,
mm,
it just feels like a real team effort. You know, everybody really genuinely gives a shit.
mm,
We get along super well. There's no hostility. You know, it's really hard when you live on a bus for a month, you know, for instance, you know, in Europe, it was three bands on one bus, one from Hungary, one from um, uh, Canada, and then us. You know, so you have a lot of, you know, different sort of social cultures that you
yeah.
immediately have to, you know, not only personally but as a band unit have to, you know, fall in line with. It's really difficult to find a touring lineup like that where you live in those close quarters with people you've never met before.
Mm,
and then by the end of it, it's just almost like summer camp, you know.
yeah.
You don't when the tour's over, it's sad, you know, and you just wish that you could just tour with those people all the time. And so that's how
Mm,
we ended up going to South America with Cryptopsy, because we were just like, fuck it, it'll be, we know that, you know, we get along with all those guys perfectly, and our music is different, which I think is also really important.
mm,
Because I mean, you know, you end up with bands that sound very similar, and that
yeah.
can be really fatiguing on a concert goer's ears, you know. So I think that
Yeah.
Atheist has always been this like really, you know, we've never really fit in with anybody else. There's really nobody like us,
Mm,
for better or for worse. You know, I mean, we're a very unique band, and there's a lot of dynamics to our music, and that's not really often found that much in extreme metal. You know, it's just a lot of fucking blazing speed and
yeah.
ferocity, and you know, and so I think that our music lends itself to those kinds of bills, where everything is just at a super blast and super ferocious all the time. So yeah, I think that you know, I just feel grateful. You know, I feel grateful that
Mm,
after all these years, this music still matters to people, and actually matters more now than it did then. So
mm.
it's interesting to watch it unfold. Looking forward to coming to Australia for sure. We've never been there
Oh,
before, so
oh God, yeah. And my excitement is I'm not even gonna, next question. I could sit here and gas bag for you 2 hours straight
what
about
city are you in?
Melbourne, near
Melbourne. Okay,
Melbourne.
we're
So
coming
yeah.
there, right? Are
Yep,
we coming there? Yeah, yeah.
yep, yep. You best
Awesome.
believe it. And
So we will meet.
we oh hell yeah. And
Are you a
we are
drinker?
going to, I don't know, this is a pretty hard call, but I think we're going to try our best to give the South Americans a run for their money, although I know that that is a tall order, and that's not throwing all of South America under the bus because that's a So your first Australian tour, it's been quite a time in the making.
35 years. Yeah.
Mm.
How
Yeah.
old are you?
I am turning 36 in a month. So
Yeah. So you were a
I've pretty much
freshly
been
born
waiting.
baby when we were first getting rolling with Piece of Time.
Yep, that's it. Yep. And I've pretty much been into you guys since. But on that note, too, I think that is, you mentioned before, too, Kelly, that more important now than ever, the state of the modern death metal scene. I think that there are so many bands that would peg you guys as a direct influence. And I think around now, probably in the last 5, 10 years, is when we're really seeing a lot of bands bringing that very atheist, I can say atheistic style out. What's your sort of thoughts and observations around the current state of the extreme metal scene and the modern death metal scene?
Well, I mean, you know, back when we first started making this kind of music, one of the things that people used to ask all the time was, you know, how do you see extreme metal progressing and where do you see it going? And one of my biggest complaints back then in the late 80s, early 90s was that the level of musicianship was not at its peak.
Mm,
And I always felt like in order for this music to survive, people really need to learn how to play their instruments, learn how to
mm,
tune, learn how to record, and you know,
mm,
and make, you know, quality music, and that's exactly what's happened. It's gone well beyond my dream for it. You know, I mean,
mm,
the level of talent in today's musicians is stunning. You know, I mean,
mm,
just the list of incredible musicians now is just it's almost a commonplace. You know,
mm,
and it's nice. You know, I mean, but I think it's important for, you know, just like us. I mean, you know, when people ask about our influences, they're kind of shocked because not a lot of them are super progressive. You know, I mean,
mm,
you know, Slayer's not a progressive band, but they were a huge influence on us in the early
mm,
days. Rush was a huge influence on us musically, but we combined it with our anger and sort of bitterness of extreme metal and created you know, this sort of hybrid thing that became, you know, our template, you know, and just, you know, writing things to where you hear something new every time you listen to a song, even if the song's 20 years old. You know, I oftentimes have people write me letters and say, you know, I always find some new twist or turn when I'm listening to Unquestionable Presence or something like that, things that I didn't notice before. And I think that that's important. It's like a good movie. If you watch, you know, every time, I love Goodfellas as a movie. I think it's a fantastic movie, and every single time I watch it, I see something different. I
yeah.
see a part of a scene that I didn't see before. And I think that that's really important to try to make music like that. Make it a make it clever and interesting and not predictable. And that's just always been my personal songwriting pursuit. And
Mm.
and I try to play with guys that have that same philosophy. And so it's great, man. It's great to see. If I'm being brutally honest, it would be nice if some of the modern journalists would do their homework a little bit. And a lot of times we get left out of the conversation when
Yeah.
people are talking about how progressive extreme metal came to be, and you can't, you can't do that. You can't leave atheist out of that conversation, or you just don't know
No,
what the
you
fuck you're talking
really
about.
can't. Yeah. Yeah.
But they do all the time. I saw recently on Loudwire there was the top 10 most progressive bands of all time, and we were one of them. But in the sort of editorial preface of the article, they were stating that Death and Nocturnus had been doing that before us, and that's just not true.
Mm.
So I think a lot of times the modern writers don't go far back enough into history to kind of tell the story correctly. I love I love the I love to hear stories about Led Zeppelin and the Who and all the bands back then, and I like to hear what the pecking order was for bands and how I love the way things come to be, and it's important to tell history in a correct
Mm.
way and chronologically. And so I just think because of our inactivity, we went away for 17 years, came back. I think because of that, somewhere in there, some of the details of the history of this band and the importance of our place and what used to be a very sort of it was us, and then a couple of years later, Cynic, and then
Yeah.
all the huge wave of progression and extreme metal came to be to where now it's just a forest full of talent and some of the details get lost. So I wish that the stories were told a little better, and all the proper old school writers, they know it. And I just think it's important to tell the younger people because you can see I want to know. I want to know who influenced Rush. You know what I mean? I want to know
Yeah.
who influenced Zeppelin, who influenced these bands. That really matters to me. I love to know that, and I think that probably a lot of people would too. So when I see it kind of incorrectly written about or stated, it kind of bugs me a little bit. But you know what? It's great to be included in the conversation at all.
Mm.
But and no disrespect to Nocturnus or Death. It's just that you know that's not the way it happened. And so anyway, I mean, everybody, it's great to see all the bands that are contemporaries all sort of living and appreciating and sort of enjoying the success of being 3+ decades old and having people still tremendously care about our body of art, and man, it's real hard to do that. I mean, there's a lot of fucking bands in the world, a lot of hundreds of thousands of people try to start a band and try to make a record and, try to make, even have one song that somebody remembers. So the fact that we have a catalog of music that is transcending generations is, can't ask for more than that. I mean, for me, that's really kind of the currency of the music that we play. We don't make millions of dollars, but
Mm.
we're very wealthy as spirits and as souls. I mean, that's how I feel. I feel like
Mm.
some things are more important than money. And leaving
Mm.
leaving a mark on a generation of musicians is a huge wealth. I think.
Mm. Mm. Well, your songwriting's a massive influence on me as a bassist. I'm still trying to get the tapping part right in Mother Man, for instance. Um, how does that translate to today and where you are today, Kelly? Because we've been talking a bit around touring, we've been talking a bit around the current incarnation of the band as a touring unit and music journalism, where folks apparently they need to do a bit of homework. And I'm noticing a bit of an eye for detail and almost a sense of spirituality in the mix too, or like your ethos around surviving the band for this long. What are your thoughts around current material? Are you guys working on? Are there things in the works around what's ahead in terms of material?
Oh
Because I
yeah,
believe you
yeah.
guys are in the songwriting process at the moment, yeah?
We are, yeah.
Yeah.
We've got a tremendous amount of ideas, individually, but collectively we put together about 6 or 7 songs, and and what I try to do, I think it's really important, and I touched on this on a couple of interviews over the last few months, that people have to understand that almost no band has all of the original members. So people got to get over that. On the internet, everybody just fucking hems and haws about, oh, it's not the original guys. And it's like, it's not with Metallica, it's not with Priest, it's not with Maiden, it's not, no one. You'd be
Hmm.
hard pressed to name me one band that has all the original members still the same. Not Anthrax, not anybody. So
Mm.
it's you have to trust the main songwriters of the band, and myself and Steve Flynn, Roger Patterson were the real core of Atheist, and I more than anybody understand their contributions and their philosophies and templates for what constitutes an atheist song, and being a
Mm.
guitar player myself, and being in on writing a lot of that guitar stuff. I need people to trust me to pick the right guys to be in the band to make a record with. And I couldn't have picked a better bunch of guys. I mean, the guys in this band right now they each have their own individual bands that are tremendous, that have albums out, and they each have these different qualities that I find as a songwriter, as an arranger and a songwriter. It's almost like somebody giving you all these brand new colors to paint with, and different
Mm.
kinds of brushes to paint with. And that's how I feel like I have this tremendous palette of talent right at my fingertips, so they can play anything I can think of. Even if I can't play it, I can explain it to them, and they also have a different level of knowledge than I have. I don't read music. I learned everything by ear. So I
Mm.
have a I have 4 hours of just recorded riffs. I record to on a nice little studio setup,
Yeah.
and it's so that way I can play both guitar parts that I have in mind for whatever the song is that we're working on, and even in some instances drums. But a lot of times I'll record it to a click track, send it to the drummer, and then let him react. And then when we get together and we get in a room, then we can really kind of fine tune everything. And what I've found is that it's just there is a I have a huge understanding of the quality level that Atheist needs to be at. So with that said, though, all of this new material, much like every single Atheist album, is different. So there's not
Mm.
two Atheist records that sound identical at all. They're
Mm.
quite different, actually, and
Absolutely. Yeah.
this one will be the same, but it'll be subscribing to that same philosophy of catching people off guard, not tricking their ears, but sort of tickling their ears with different things that you wouldn't expect. The unexpected is something that I really love, and I love dynamics. I love it for it to be ferocious and then not, and then ferocious again, and just those pauses. I think a lot of really really extreme blast music, metal and stuff like that. I think that's one thing that's kind of missing from that, is that it's so fast and so heavy every single song for a whole album that your ear just kind of gets used to it. It's just all this
Mm.
all the time. When you don't realize how loud or fast something is until it's quiet and slow. What I
Mm.
mean? So when you combine those two things, it sort of amplifies the extreme level of music. So I like that philosophy of no rules in music. There are no matter what record we make, there's always going to be somebody that's going to be like, oh, it's not Unquestionable Presence, or it's oh, the production sounds too modern, and there's just always it's tough, man. I mean, and it's always by 35 and 35 years old and below. They're always the ones bitching about the production, but they can't understand. I see a lot of people talking about the new Dark Angel, for instance.
Mm.
The production is this and that. Well, the guy that mixed that record is Mike Frazier. Mike Frazier is an incredible he's mixed, Aerosmith, Pump, all the Metallica records, AC/DC. The man knows how to mix a fucking record. So whatever it is you're hearing that you're seeking from the Dark Angel record, maybe you just don't understand. I mean,
Yeah.
that we can't go back to 1991 and go back into those, to that level of technology where it was then to now. Even in a live setting, back in the day, we never played with triggers on our bass drums,
Yeah.
but technology sort of lent itself to the clarity that triggered drums bring to a mix.
Mm.
And all that, the speed of double bass, was very difficult to hear back in the day. When you listen to Fight Fire with Fire from Metallica, or even Angel of Death from Slayer, the bass drums are that, and there's a lovable quality about it, where they don't sound exactly the same. Well, with the trigger in a live setting, we've fought that for a while. We didn't want to do that, but we found that, if we didn't do that, our sound would be inferior to the bands that we were playing with live. And so what
Yeah.
we've done is sort of incorporated part trigger, part real drums. And so
Right.
you're getting the quality of a real bass drum, and then you're getting the trigger for the definition. And so that
Nice.
we really found a real sweet spot with that. Our drummer Dylan Marks is incredible, and he plays these songs too with a different level of power than Steve Flynn ever did.
Mm.
No disrespect to Steve at all. It's just Steve is 5'7". Dylan is a big kid. He's more of a Bonham kind of drummer, like big,
Mm.
powerful, hits very hard. So
Smacking it.
one of the
Yeah.
things that I really enjoyed about playing with him is that he's created this more muscular sound of these songs that people have been listening to for decades. And in a live setting, I think a lot of people walk away going, "Holy shit! That was way heavier than I ever heard it on the album." I mean, the technology has lent itself to our music because of all the little things that are in there. In the 1991 production, you can't really hear everything. You can't hear all the little things. And in a 21st century sort of live scenario, you can really, really hear everything. And guitar sounds are higher quality, drum sounds are higher quality. So it's lent itself to make the songs sort of have a new life, and so getting in the studio, and writing new stuff is, I guess in closing, what I was trying to say is you just got to trust me. I know what Atheist should sound like. And if everybody, just allows that to happen, and you're not going to get a repeat performance out of us. You're going to get something new, and it might take you a couple of years to get used to it, but that's the way it was with Piece of Time and Unquestionable Presence. It took 15 years for people to go, fucking finally. Oh, wait a minute, I understand now. I mean, all those
Yeah.
all those little things. Back then it was, when it first came out, it was not that well received, and people were
Mm.
very confused by it. So it's really refreshing to go out now and in this generation, and and get the love and appreciation from a lot of young bands, and it's nice. So sometimes nice to be the old guy.
Yeah. On that topic too, I think there's a lot of people who are listening because you guys have been around for so long. You do have cross-generational appeal. For instance, like I'm a millennial, you will probably have a lot of older folks, younger folks across
Oh yeah.
generations at shows and a bit of an interesting mix. I think you've answered it in multiple ways throughout our chat here, but I think second penultimate question from me for you enduring basically musicianship and touring and lineup changes on a day-to-day basis in terms of not le less, I guess, the more glamorous sort of parts and, managing some of there's a lot of stuff that goes into being a musician, right? Especially after such a long time. For you, what are some of the central things that have kept and held you going forward through so many years? And at the current moment, you're a dad, you've got that to manage alongside an incredible touring schedule. What are some sorts of things that keep you going in this band after all this time?
I mean, it's playing music is like a magic power. I mean, and it, I'm so grateful that I didn't get caught up into sports when I was in high school. Some
Yeah,
some people excelled at sports and really had a great sort of 4 years, but then that shit went away. And
yeah.
so I'm glad that I stayed in my room and smoked weed and learned how to play guitar, because it's never gonna go away from me. I mean, it's
Mm,
always there for me every single time. Is the more I put into it, the more I get out of it. And I just have this intense appreciation for that, in itself. The art of playing music, the art of taking strings on a guitar, amplifying them. These sound waves go out to people. They hear it, they respond, and you respond to their response. And it's this fucking magic trick that happens every time a song is played, I think, and people don't think about it in literal terms like that, but it really is that way. I mean, a great example would be Rage Against the Machine. If you watch from behind the stage at Rage Against the Machine, when a part's coming up that these 20,000 people that are standing in front of them are going to fucking explode. Their spirits are going to explode, and they react, almost in a chemical reaction. But it's a spiritual reaction, much like a chemical would be. It's like when shake up a bottle of Coke and you open it up, and the science of that. And I think that I have such a level of appreciation for that effect, that cause and effect, that I seek it constantly. I seek, trying to write things that make people fucking freak out or scratch their head, or I find great joy in that. And the key is to find other people that have that same joy. And
Mm.
I definitely have found it with these guys that I'm with now. And I've had it in the past with, obviously the original lineup. And when we were kids, we were just happy to be in a band. It was just, when you're 16, 17 years old, you're not really thinking about making it longer than 5 years. 5 years seems like so far away when you're 17. But it's just, one of the cool things about getting older is just looking back on this body of work, and the process that led to the completion of that body of work. And yeah, there's just enough of a hunger that I'll never lose. There are a lot of guys, my contemporaries, guys that have played in bands for a long time, that gave it up, quit. And a lot of times I may have a conversation with them, and they'll be like, man, I couldn't, I had kids and I had to get a regular job. And I go, I completely understand. Steve Flynn, for instance, as our original drummer, has an incredible corporate position, has 4 daughters and a beautiful wife and a beautiful house. And, he chose financial security, which, it's not a bad thing. Guaranteed financial security over the crapshoot of playing music. And, in some instances, he was right. Financially, he was correct, because, we definitely have not made the level of money that he was able to make in the corporate world. But I think that he'd be the first one to tell you also. And we're very, very good friends. We talk a lot, usually once a week. And, he lives a little bit vicariously through me now. And I tell him about the shows, and how much people still really give a shit about this music. And it's exciting for him to hear those stories. And I love to share them with him, because, he was a part of the architecture of this music. And that, not only lasted this long, but went on to, influence a lot of really great music that I enjoy today. Bands that cite Atheist as an influence, I enjoy their interpretation, where they took what we were doing and took it even further. Between the Buried and Me, Animals as Leaders, even Gorguts, for instance. We toured with Gorguts in the early days, 1991, when those kids were, I don't know, maybe 18 years old. And the first Gorguts record was very primitive, and I think that Luke LeMay was a very smart kid, and he saw kind of what we were doing, and took his own, and took and sort of made his own technical prowess.
Hello, Brady from the past soon, because I am interjecting from the future. We've had to do a little bit of an intermission, unfortunately, because I am on the free version of Zoom and did not realize that there is a time limit. We got a little bit awkwardly cut off there with my conversation with Kelly. And that brings me to a bit of an announcement. So this podcast and blog has been going for about 4 years now, and I'm not sure if people realize, but trying to run both a blog and a podcast completely ad-free, completely voluntary, and without relying on paid shills or promotion or anything like that. All of our promotion of artists is free. All of our staff work on a voluntary basis. I myself work on a voluntary basis, and I actually invest a fair bit of money into this project, although you might be questioning that because it's not the flashiest podcast or the flashiest blog around. But actually, there's quite a bit of cost involved with this project. So what I have actually done is, as opposed to setting up an ongoing membership crowdfunding account, I've actually gone ahead and set up Ko-fi, K-O-F-I. Now, I will be releasing the link to that onto our website quite soon, and there's no ongoing tiers or anything like that. Well, there'll be tears from me, like crying tears, when I have a look at my inbox and swear to myself a bit at how many damn emails I've got. But other than that, we're not offering any kind of ongoing sub model at the moment. I recognize that we have quite a disparate and quite scattershot range of topics. So, for instance, those of you who might be, say, more into the gaming or tabletop aspect side of things, you may not be as into the music. So I didn't feel exactly right asking a subscription fee of people at this stage, especially because with the cost of living crisis and capitalism dying a slow death in the backside, actually it's quite tough for people, and $10 actually needs to be invested pretty strategically for a lot of people right now, especially on a monthly basis. So I am considering in the future delivering a subscription model, and I would have a lot of bonus content and some other features that would make it worth your while. For now, that's a little bit impractical with where I'm at and where the team's at. However, I will have capacity to do so eventually. For now, I have gone ahead and I have created a Ko-fi profile, K-O-F-I. The one-time donation is $5 Australian, which is, I don't have the maths up in front of me, about $4 US, something like that, $2.50 to Euro. It's about the price of a Ko-fi. So if you would like to support the creative industry in things like server costs, paying subscription for some of the tools that are used to create this podcast, the site hosting fees, which, things like that. If you're interested in supporting a completely ad-free and voluntary project for the price of a cup of coffee, I would be, myself and the team would be very humbled and thankful for that. You are under no obligation to. I'm not going to insert these calls to action multiple minutes long into every episode. Don't worry, it's not going to be any of those sorts of things. There'll just be a link floating around. But for now, if you would like to jack me up with iced lattes a go-go so that I can smash out some more content, just letting you know, we have a Ko-fi profile, and that's a $5 Australian one-time donation. Thank you for your support, and to everyone who has been following the podcast and the blog, thank you very much, because it's been a bit of a journey, and with things like the death of the website and me spending pretty much up to this point in the year reviving the entire podcast and blog manually. By the way, my next self-hosted episode, as opposed to an interview, I will be going through that in a bit more granular detail. So stay tuned for that. And as usual, I hope that you guys have a fantastic time. I'm going to shut up now because I'm just going around in circles. It's nighttime, as you can kind of see behind me. And the ADHD meds have clearly worn off. I will let you get back to it. Let's jump straight back into the last little bit of our conversation with Kelly Shaefer. Thank you again, Kelly, and thank you very much to Anthony Blaney from yourmatebookings.com. Go check the dude out. He is absolutely smashing it with tours at the moment, and this interview could not have happened without him. Thanks, Anth, and thank you for listening. Cheers, guys. And as I always say, peace, love, and grindcore. We're as bad as each other, mate. We got cut off. We got cut off by the Zoom lady. She got decided, and that's capitalism for you, mate. This is why you support music journalism because content creators need to be able to afford pro Zoom, apparently. Well, look, we haven't
Well, I
got.
think what I was saying, I think where we left off was just you were asking, sort of how do I, sort of keep the motivation. But I think that, in closing, it's inspiring to like I said, make art that's relevant in a different generation, and that's enough to keep me. I don't know what life is like without music, so that's just
Mm,
kind of it's not even really something I do. It's just kind of something I am, and so I have to be creating all the time. So it's really the scary part for me as I get older is like what happens on a day, what happens if something happens to me and I can't make music. Like
yeah.
that's something that I really worry about. I'd rather just go out blazing, than to wither away, and not be able to make music in the latter years of my life. So,
Mm.
so I'm grateful to be here, and I'm grateful that somebody gives a shit, and it's a good thing.
Well, we certainly give a shit, and there's a lot of people who in Australia who give a big shit, which is a weird metaphor for me to
Can't wait to
use.
come to Australia. I have no idea for an American guy, man. I mean, I got to tell you, I don't know what it's like for you guys to think of what it's like in the States, but I just, man, I might as well be going to another planet. Australia to me is just a land that I can't even really picture. I mean, obviously I've watched nature programs and I have I've watched Crocodile Dundee and
Yeah.
and that's, man, I mean, the American culture is so far from keeping tabs with Australia that it's kind of interesting, really. It's kind of something I've been
Mm.
reflecting on, like, how is it that this entire, you know, the huge fucking continent, this place, that seems like such a world away from us. But at the end of the day, every conversation I've had with somebody from Australia has just been more just more relatable than I would have expected. I don't I somehow feel like you know your country is vast and it's not cluttered. Am I wrong?
Mhm.
Is there
Mm.
a cluttered level to Australia at all?
We're a very heavily urbanized country, so but that's the West and the world in general. So I mean, it reflects your tour dates, really. Most people find themselves in urban areas in Australia, particularly on the coasts. But it's very interesting that it's been so long and you haven't been to Australia. Were there any attempts? I know we're wrapping up soon, but here's me throwing in more
Well,
questions.
well,
I'm
we
just
were
as bad, but were there
we were
any sort of, yeah,
friends with Alarm, Mark and Alarm.
shout out to
As a matter of
Mark
fact,
Hefferman.
a
Yep.
cool story about that is Atheists had been broken up. I went off and did Neurotica and toured with Neurotica for a number of years. And then I got an email from Mark and he's like, "Hey man, we're playing in St. Petersburg. We're from Australia and we play Piece of Time. Will you come and do Piece of Time with us?" And I had not in 16 or 17 years sang that song. And that was the very first time that I reintroduced myself to atheist music. I mean, I literally dropped it, after
Mm.
'93, and didn't come back until like this was 2005 or six or something
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. So, and got up on stage, and there's a video of it on YouTube too. It's really really cool, and it was such a fun experience. And that kind of was the very beginning of the just the no, maybe people still care, about this music, and that's where I started exploring the possibilities from that. So we have that Aussie connection, with Alarm,
Mm.
and so we talked for years about, hey, how can we get over there and play, and it just never materialized until now. So thankfully, Your Mate Bookings, which Anthony is the main guy for Your Mate. And this guy really works hard to bring things to Australia, so he deserves a huge tip of the cap from all the metal fans in Australia. I mean, the guy is working really, really hard to it's not easy to bring an American band to Australia and get all the flights and all the travel and all the shit. And I mean, it's a lot. So
Yeah.
I'm grateful to him, and also another Simon from Pull the Plug Patches,
Yeah, yep, yep.
which is a huge just he's been a guy that I've talked to for the last several years, and I've just watched him grow his company into this really super high quality metal merchandise company with his pins and patches, and his merchandise is just incredible
Yeah.
and always really reliable. And can't say enough about him and his company. Pull the Plug Patches have sponsored, I think, this the second tour. They sponsored the Cynic tour with us, Atheist and Cynic,
Mm.
and that was a fun tour. That's something that I think would have been cool in Australia.
Oh
Us
God,
playing together,
yeah.
Atheist and Cynic on that tour was really special because it was just truly both corners of the beginning of technical extreme metal. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Two different takes on it. And it was a lot of fun doing that tour and playing with that because me and Paul have been friends for forever since long before they got signed, and and we have always had we've gone through the same struggle of getting people to understand our weirdness, and no matter who we play with, we're always the outcast. It's the
Mm.
same with Cynic. What I mean, you'll have on a festival you'll have out of 20 bands you'll have like 13 of them that are really similar, and you'll have a couple of fringe acts, but then there's fucking Atheist there or Cynic, and it's just there's really to go on tour. We both, I mean, we toured with Candlemass, and then we toured with um um Cannibal Corpse and Benediction, so three completely different kinds of bands, because there was really no one for us. So that tour with Cynic was really nice. I remember on a couple of occasions just telling Paul, isn't it nice to go on stage knowing that everybody knows what they signed up for tonight? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Nobody's coming to see Atheist and Cynic and wants any kind of knuckle dragging, fucking old school, mosh
Yeah.
pit metal. I mean,
Yeah.
they came with a brain and they're ready to fucking soak it in, and that was a lot of fun, man. It was a very liberating feeling. It was probably the only time that me and Paul have ever felt that kind of comfort. Like, all right, this is a world that everybody was well versed in what was about to happen, because I mean we both went through getting yelled at and booed and all that shit back in the days. It was really really tough to
Mm.
to stand on stage and play music you're proud of and have people go, you fucking suck, because we were playing 100 miles an hour,
Mm. Mm.
all the time, and we
Mm.
weren't, as brutal and sort of murderous as all of our contemporaries. And it was tough, man. It was tough. So, it all played out in the end, and it makes me so happy to see Cannibal Corpse just crushing at a huge level, Obituary crushing at a huge level. Just so proud of the alumni, of
Mm.
Florida bands and Deicide as well. I mean, just the endless list. Everybody made it to the finish line. You know what I mean? It was like a
Yeah.
marathon, and most all Malevolent Creations making a tremendous comeback as well. And
Yeah.
yeah, just the list of Florida bands that really persevered, and why Monstrosity,
Yeah.
still cooking it. I mean, just God, I just can't say enough about all the bands, and everybody found a place on the mountain. You know what I mean? And it's all in different places, but it all is the same mountain. The mountain of sort of extreme metal, and I'm proud to be on it.
Hell
Awesome.
yeah. Love it. I love it. And this has been for me, again, I don't want to fanboy too hard. This is a life-altering opportunity for me, and I
Thank
really
you, man.
appreciate the time and
It's
the depth
humbling.
that you've taken to chat with me today. Atheists are a massive, massive influence for me. You
Thank
mentioned
you.
before, it's very interesting because a lot of the times when I'm interviewing bands, especially established bands, they can recant their last tour. You kind of don't know what you're in for, and I almost don't want to give away too much. But look, I'm just gonna say, all of us, me included, I mean, I'll tap out 2 minutes in the pit because I'll be gassed because I'm not fit. But um, I think what you can expect, Kelly, is that very South American, as you said, that flavor of we have all been waiting a long time for this. I mean, even I've been waiting decades. There are others that have been waiting as long as I've been alive, if not longer. So I think it's a little bit of a role reversal here. And I just want to offer for you as an Australian, you'll see the Alarm Boys. cutting sick in the pit, of course. And big shout out to Anthony from Your Mate Bookings again. He's a consummate professional and he's been killing it with the tours. So I just want to offer some reassurance, but also some excitement because you've talked a lot about that energy, and we are going to give you some goddamn fucking energy in those pits. It's
I believe it.
decades
I
of
believe it.
pent up energy. Um, and look, I just
That's
think,
only going to make us more on fire. You know, I mean, I
hell
think the
yeah.
one thing that I want to get back to that is that I promise we're going to play those songs with surgical precision, and coupled with the the loudness of it all, it's gonna be a nice little explosion between you guys and us. It's gonna be
Yep.
awesome.
Yep. I think there's gonna be international headlines, dude. I think it's gonna be there were multiple nuclear explosions across Australia that happened to coincidence with the time. Thank you so much for the
Thank you,
opportunity
Simon.
today, Kelly. And I look forward to
What's the
catching
name of
up.
your band?
My band,
Uh-huh.
my band. Well, my band doesn't have a name at the moment. I'm doing a sort of a post-rock thing at the moment.
Cool.
And my podcast is in a strength check podcast. In terms of bands, I've got some band stuff going, and it's
You're a bass
interesting.
player though, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
So
Um,
do you play a four or a five? Or...
4, 5 fretless, yeah. And you
Oh, cool.
guys are a massive influence on me, especially the
Cool.
Tony Choi era stuff. So I actually have you guys to thank a lot on the bass department. So I'm gonna
I'm curious
be,
about. I'm curious. I want to point something out as per our conversation.
yeah.
What era do you see as the Tony Choi era?
Uh I think it's just me losing steam and the first thing that comes to mind, but
And what I'm saying is like, so a lot of people don't realize that, and this is in no way a disrespect to Tony, but Unquestionable Presence was 95% written by Roger Patterson, those bass lines.
mm,
So a lot of, Tony recorded those bass lines 8 weeks after Roger died, but Roger
mm,
Patterson really it kind of gets lost in the shuffle of appreciation as well when it comes to the catalog of Atheist and you as a bass player. I was just wondering whether you were going to say Unquestionable and Elements, because the great thing
mm,
about Tony Choi was I mean, aside from his ability and his talent, was just his knack of rhythm. And when we wrote Elements, it was in a very short period of time, and
yeah.
so he really worked with. Actually, Josh Greenbaum is the drummer on that. We're getting ready to hopefully see him in Hawaii. We're coming to Hawaii right before we come to see you in Australia. And but anyway, he was able to kind of take that, that's where that Latin jazz came from, was Tony Choi. And
Mm,
so he's really owed a lot of credit on Elements for that vibe. You know what I mean?
mm,
And we really had zero time to think about it. Like that
yeah.
whole record was just written very quickly, and we didn't have time. A lot of times if you write songs, you get to kind of live with them, play them for people, see how it feels live, playing them live. There was none of that shit. It was just
Mm.
we just that was an incredible experience. But so I was just curious, as somebody from the younger generation, what you saw as the Tony Choi sort of era of Atheist.
I'd say more around elements, and I definitely didn't want to disrespect Patterson I think across the board is my general. That's an interesting point though, and it reiterates what we were talking about before, how certain things will come to mind, and people will kind of skip out parts. I think for me as a bass player, everything you guys have done and every instrument, and including your vocals, has been a massive influence on me as a listener, as a player. I actually would credit Atheist as a large reason as to why I got into bass playing in general, as opposed to being, okay, I just want to be a yet another Andreas Kisser or etc. So I think for me as a musician, another thing I want to sort of God, I could spend all day fanboying here, man. You got to cut me off at
I
one
mean,
point.
listen, hey, listen, Simon. We're one thing that you need to understand from us anyway. I'm a fan of metal, just like you are, man. I'll fanboy out on Merciful Fate all day long, and
Mm,
and fucking Black Sabbath and shit like that just like moves my blood. And so
mm,
I love to talk about music with people. So if the word fanboy sort of gets this derogatory fucking sort of vibe, but man, there needs to be more fan people. You know what I mean? Like
Mm,
the fans of the story of how these songs came about, and how somebody can make a record on the other side of Earth that matter to you in Australia as a young man trying to play music. You know, I mean that shit you just can't put a price on. So I can't say enough thank you for that. And every time I hear that story from anybody, I think I get caught up in the science of it. Like, what the fuck does that happen? You know,
yeah.
how do you how do you make a song in Sarasota, Florida, and then 35 years later talk to somebody in a completely different part of the world, and then hear their story of how they discovered it and how it mattered so much to them that it made them want to play or whatever the story is. That's exciting to me. I love hearing those kinds of because that's organic. You know,
Mm,
that's not calculated or preconceived or put together. You know, that's just almost the same way plants grow. You know what I mean? Like it's just fucking how that I can't get enough of that cause and effect of that,
mm,
and it continues, and it happened throughout blues music and and soul and R&B and all. You know, I mean, the power of influence, you know, to keep the ball rolling and a progress and keep music progressing is so fucking important, but so overlooked in a lot of ways, you know, especially in
yeah.
this day and age where music is instant. You can just anything you want to hear is at your fingertips.
Mm.
Um, I come from an era where it was just, man, you know, tape trading and
Okay, yeah.
when somebody said something about this band from Holland
Distros,
you got
yeah.
to check out their demo and somebody sends you the demo and you hope that it made it through the mail without getting
Yeah.
crushed and so, but so those are all things that I really, really love, and I could talk about forever and ever. So I'm a fanboy as well.
Awesome. You are all gonna cop. I think everyone in the band's gonna cop a lot of fanboying from all angles. Yeah, the derogatory term, but that influence and that appreciation, I think expect a
Thank you,
lot of
man.
conversations around that in the flesh too. So,
I can't wait to meet everybody in Australia. Please don't be that guy that's afraid to come over and say hello because I'm not on tour to fucking hide out. I like to meet people and I like to hear stories and have fun. So, and the whole band is that way. We're very we very much love to meet everybody. So I look forward to meeting everybody. It's gonna be a real journey for us that we'll never forget. So thank you for having us. Thank you to Anthony and Your Mate Bookings for making it happen. And thank you, Simon, for spreading the word. You know, appreciate it.
fantastic. Awesome. Thanks so much for the chat, Kelly. I'll let you get on
My
with your
pleasure.
evening, and
All right,
I will
cheers.
see you. You'll see me running around the pit like a
See you in
headless
a few
chicken with the
weeks.
rest of us.
Yeah, hit me up the day before, man, and so I can make sure that we get together. Okay.
For sure. Absolutely. Look
All right.
forward to it.
Cheers, Simon.
Thank you
Thank you,
so
my
much,
friend.
Kelly. Cheers,
Cheers,
mate.
man.
Bye.